If you were born in the 1980s, there's a strange feeling you've probably carried for years but never fully explained. A feeling that the world you were prepared for disappeared. Not slowly, not over generations, almost overnight. You remember when boredom was normal, when people knocked on doors instead of texting first, when friendship happened by accident, when nobody could reach you for hours, and nobody panicked. And now? You walk into a room and within 30 seconds you can tell, you don't quite fit here. It's not that anyone is unkind. It's not that the conversation excludes you. It's something quieter than that. A subtle gap between you and everyone else in the room. The references don't land the same way. The pace feels slightly off. You laugh at the right moments. You say the right things. But underneath all of it, there's a feeling you've had so many times you've stopped questioning it. I don't belong here. And the strange part is, you have this feeling almost everywhere, with people older than you, with people younger than you, at work, at family gatherings, sometimes even with people your own age. You watch other people seem to be somewhere fully present in their own life, and you wonder why you can't quite do that. Why there's always a half step of distance between you and the room. You've called it introversion. You've called it being an outsider. You've called it just how you are. And maybe some of that is true. But if you were born in the late 1980s, there's another explanation. One that isn't about your personality at all. One that has to do with the specific kind of world you were formed in, and the very different kind of world you were asked to live in afterward. What you're feeling has a name, and once you hear it, a lot of things start to make sense. You've probably seen the videos by now, the ones that celebrate your generation as a kind of bridge, the ones that tell you that you're uniquely adaptable, that you can navigate both the analog and digital worlds, that you carry the best of both. Those videos are warm, and they're not entirely wrong. You can do those things. You did do those things. But here's what they don't tell you. Being a bridge between two worlds is not a neutral position. A bridge is a structure that gets walked on from both sides. It holds the weight of two eras passing through it. And if you spend your formative years being a bridge, translating constantly between what came before and what came after, you don't develop the same sense of belonging to a place that other people do, because a bridge doesn't belong to either side. A bridge connects them. Psychologists who study identity formation describe a concept called anchoring, the developmental process by which a person comes to feel rooted in a specific cultural and temporal context. Most people grow up inside a world that stays mostly recognizable through their formative decades. They get anchored. They develop the felt sense of, this is my time, this is my place, this is where I'm from. For people born in the late 1980s, that anchoring process was interrupted, not because of anything you did, because the world you were being anchored to was being disassembled while you were still attaching to it. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, in his work on the nervous system, describes how repeated environmental change without integration time leaves the body in a state of mild chronic disorientation. The technical term is allostatic load, the wear and tear of constant recalibration. But what it feels like from the inside is exactly what you've been describing. I don't quite fit here. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because you were never given the chance to fully fit anywhere. Here's the part most people don't walk you through carefully. Before you turned 35, 4 versions of the world you knew quietly disappeared. Not metaphorically, actually. And each one took with it a piece of the context you needed to feel located in time. The first disappearance came when you were between 11 and 15 years old, September 11th, 2001. You were exactly at the age when the brain consolidates its sense of how safe the world is. You were supposed to be learning that tomorrow looks something like today. Instead, you watched a television wheeled into your classroom and learned that the structures around you could come apart on a Tuesday morning. The world you had been a child in, the pre-2001 world, ended that day, and no one held a funeral for it. It just stopped existing, while you kept going to school. The second disappearance came in 2008. You were 18 to 22. You had been told your entire life that if you followed the path, you'd arrive somewhere stable. You believed it. And then you graduated into a world where the promise wasn't real anymore. The jobs weren't there. The houses weren't affordable. The future you'd been pointing yourself at simply wasn't where you'd been told it would be. You didn't just lose a financial opportunity. You lost the version of adulthood you'd been preparing for, and no one acknowledged that something had been taken from you. The third disappearance was slower, between 2010 and 2016. This was the years when shared reality came apart. Social media restructured how information moved. The people you grew up with started inhabiting different versions of the world. Conversations that used to be possible became impossible. You were in your 20s, the decade you were supposed to be building an adult identity, and you were watching the ground of agreement itself dissolve. The world where most people more or less agreed on basic facts, gone. And no announcement was made. The fourth disappearance came in 2020. By then you were around 30. Many of you were becoming parents, buying first homes, settling into something that looked like the life you'd been promised. And then everything stopped. The version of normalcy you just managed to build dissolved in a week, 4 times. Before the age of 35. Most people, across most of human history, live inside a single recognizable version of the world for their entire lives. You've already lived through 4, and each one took with it a piece of the place you were supposed to feel from. That's why every room feels slightly off, not because of who you are, because the where you're from no longer exists. There's a specific kind of loneliness that lives in this cohort, and it deserves to be named accurately. You've probably had the thought, why don't I have close friends anymore? Why is it so hard to maintain connection? What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. The kind of friendship you were trained for as a child, unscheduled, in person, continuous, anchored in shared physical space, that infrastructure largely no longer exists for adults your age. The neighborhoods emptied out. The third places, the diners, the arcades, the corner spots where people just were. Most of them closed or got replaced by something you don't walk into without a reason. You were socially formed in an operating system that has been discontinued. The new one doesn't run the old programs, and nobody handed you a manual for the transition. This is what sociologists call social infrastructure collapse. It is not about you not trying hard enough or being too busy or doing something wrong. The substrate of casual, repeated contact, the thing that in your childhood simply produced friendships as a byproduct, is gone for adults in their late 30s. You didn't lose your friends. You lost the world that made keeping them effortless. And this is part of why every room feels slightly off. The way you know how to connect, the way you were taught to connect by living it, doesn't match the way connection is supposed to happen now. So you keep walking into rooms and feeling that quiet gap and assuming the gap is something wrong with you. It isn't. The gap is the distance between the world that formed you and the world you're now expected to live in. Here is the part almost no one puts into words for you, and once you hear it, the rest of the feeling tends to make sense. What you've been calling nostalgia is not nostalgia. Nostalgia is warm. It's pleasant. It doesn't ache. It doesn't catch you off guard in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. It doesn't sit in your chest like something heavier. What you've been carrying has a different name. Psychologist Pauline Boss spent her career studying what she calls ambiguous loss. Grief over something that ended without a clear ending. No funeral, no closure. The thing is just gone, but it never officially left. That's what you've been feeling. The world you were formed in did not die in a single moment. There was no announcement. There was no day when someone said, the version of life you were trained for will not be the version you live in. It just slowly stopped being there while you were still inside it. You've been grieving in slow motion, a place that disappeared while you were still standing in it. That's why I want to go back doesn't pass. It's not nostalgia you're failing to grow out of. It's grief you were never given permission to feel. And that grief, when it isn't named, is exactly what produces the feeling of being out of place. Because part of you is still oriented toward a world that no longer exists. You're not fully here, because some of you is still there, quietly waiting for a place to come back that never will. I'm not going to end this with a motivational line. You've heard enough of those, and they don't help. What I'm going to say is this. The feeling of not belonging, at work, in your family, in your own generation, in the present moment, is not a flaw in your personality. It is the felt sense of a person whose anchoring world disappeared before they could fully attach to it. It is the body's honest response to having been formed in a place that no longer exists. You do not have to fix this by trying harder to fit in. You will not solve this by becoming more present, more social, more enthusiastic about the current world. Those strategies don't address what's actually happening. What helps, according to researchers who study ambiguous loss, is something quieter: naming it. Letting yourself acknowledge that something ended, even though no one held a ceremony for it. Letting yourself grieve a world that didn't get a goodbye. It also helps, and this is something grief researchers call mutual witnessing, to be in the presence of other people who lived the same disappearance. Not to wallow, not to relive it, just to have it acknowledged out loud between two people who were there. You are not out of place because you are broken. You are out of place because the place you were from went away, and no one stopped to tell you it was okay to miss it. It's okay to miss it. It's okay to not feel fully at home in the present. It's okay that part of you is still standing in a world that no longer exists. That part of you is not the problem. That part of you is the evidence that you were really there. If this video named something you've been feeling for years without being able to describe, leave a comment with the year you were born, not to claim a label, not to belong to a category, just so you can see, in the comments below, that there are others standing in the same gap you're standing in. You are not out of place alone. Subscribe and keep exploring the hidden side of the mind. Your next journey is waiting in the next video.